Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic part 2. Which is what if Naruto thought he was a monster and abandoned Konoha part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto was sitting on the top the dome roof of the Sabaka estate, admiring the stars in the sky. He had already brought his few belongings to a room that Gaara had told him would be his. Naruto had meant to spend some time with Gaara, but Gaara politely declined. Gaara had stated that while Naruto had made Gaara realize a few things, he still wasn't in complete control of his situation, unlike Naruto. Gaara stated also that he didn't really sleep, so he decided to patrol Suna to keep himself occupied for the evening. Naruto decided to relax and enjoy the cool night air. The sound of footsteps made the blonde look behind him to meet a rather blank-faced Temari. So, Naruto, huh? She asked, letting a little anger show on her face. Temari-chan, I can explain. Gaara already told me and Kankuro, and Baki know about it already. I just want to know why. She asked as she took a seat next to the younger boy. Because I don't trust myself with others anymore ever since the Kyuubi first revealed its power to me in a battle back on my first C-rank mission a few weeks before I came to Suna. That battle with Gaara only further proves how dangerous I am. He replied, staring at the sky. Temari had the feeling that this side of Naruto was rarely seen, the side that showed he was actually quite sensitive and worried about what the few people close to the blonde thought about him. Regardless, she didn't accept that as an answer. What do you mean? Naruto gave her a sad grin. I mean that I don't know if I can always guarantee that I will have control over Kyuubi. I may end up hurting someone. Or worse. Is that why you left Konoha? To protect those close to you? She said, finally seeing what he meant. Naruto simply nodded. Well, then why did you ever come here? Naruto looked to Temari, and raised an eyebrow. Surely you would only end up leaving again, right? That way, you wouldn't hurt anyone here, right? She couldn't help but grin as she pointed out the flaw in his idea. Naruto looked like someone had just told him that Kakashi didn't have a face underneath his mask. Well. Temari laughed a little. Naruto, you are kind of going against your own beliefs of protecting those close to you by leaving them, but I can tell you care deeply about them if you're willing to leave them to protect them. She slowly placed a hand on his, and gently squeezed it. Naruto nearly jumped at the contact, and gave the Wind Maiden a confused look. Temari-chan. You did something that I had never thought possible today, Naruto. You saved Gaara from himself, you freed him from his problems, I guess. Our family owes you our thanks at the very least. So, thank you. Naruto grinned, and rubbed the back of his head. Haha, it was nothing. Quote. Temari seemed to grip his hand tighter, and Naruto stopped his nervous grinning as he looked into her eyes to see tears. I mean it, Naruto. You made Gaara feel alive in a whole new way. She started to shed the tears, and quickly wiped them away with her free hand. You want to know some thing? Naruto nodded, unsure of what he was going to expect. Gaara apologized to me for what happened today. He let me hug him after that. Hug him? He hasn't let me do that since. Oh, I can't even remember when the last time was that I did that. She smiled, and Naruto felt his heart melt at the sight of how the moon shined on her face. Naruto. I want to thank you for also saving me today. I could have been killed, but you saved me. Thank you. She was now crying freely, even though it was still quiet. Naruto had very little experience, if any at all, when it came to comforting a woman in distress. He decided to wrap his arms around the kunoichi, hearing once that hugs were one form of comforting another. He was surprised when instead of pushing him away, she only held onto him tighter. Hey, it's okay. I'm glad you're happy about all this. Naruto said, hoping she wouldn't think he was perverted by holding her. Temari found that Naruto was a bit warmer than her, and had to use every bit of her willpower to pull away from him. She stopped crying and smiled. Sorry about that, that was stupid of me. It's just, today truly has changed the life of my entire family. We used to be afraid of Gaara, and now I'm finding that Gaara wants to spar with Kankuro and I, and learn how to prepare meals. It's just, she shook her head, Naruto, promise me that you never end up how Gaara once was. Quote. Naruto smiled, and an idea came to his mind. He remembered back to what Haku had said about precious people, and to protect them at any and all costs, I promise Tamari. From here on out, I'll never go back on my word. That's my Nindo. I promise I'll never become a distant, cold-hearted person. Tamari couldn't help but smile, and her already huge amount of respect for the boy increased further. She just heard him declare his Nindo, and that he would never go back on his promise. She couldn't help but smile even further. Naruto, you truly are a wonderful guy. Naruto had the decency to blush a bit at the compliment, and Tamari smiled upon seeing this. She decided to tease him a bit, and gave him a quick peck on the cheek before getting up. Well, I am off to bed. Why don't you and I go and train tomorrow? I can help you harness your wind better. Naruto nodded with a dumbstruck look on his face, clearly surprised by Tamari's kiss to the cheek. Tamari giggled, sounds good. I'll stop by your place tomorrow around 10 or so. Good night, Naruto-kun. A minute later, Naruto's eyes widened. Did she? Tamari could hear the hooting and hollering of Naruto outside. Jinchuriki or not, Naruto was worthy of her heart. He had already proven his strength to her, and his kindness had spoken for itself. Sure, he didn't always run on all 100 watts of his brainpower, but she kind of thought that was cute. Maybe, just maybe, she could give Naruto a chance. Aloud, my first kiss from a girl. Made her grin. Forget maybe giving him a chance. He didn't have a choice. After hearing several yells from local perbi telling him to keep it down, Naruto finally settled down. He spent most of the remaining night admiring the stars, and absent-mindedly touching his right cheek while grinning. After some time he felt another presence, and turned to see the other local Jinchuriki standing a little ways from him. Hey, Gaara. The red-haired boy nodded. You wouldn't mind if I joined you, would you? Naruto smiled. Go right ahead. Gaara sat down cross-legged by Naruto and joined the blonde in watching the stars. It seems that you enjoy watching the night sky as much as I do. Gaara spoke, seeing the far-off look on Naruto's face. Yeah, the blonde chuckled with a sad grin. I find that it always helped me forget about the bad stuff in my life, and that I should be happy to be alive. And at the same time it reminds that even though I was alone, I never had to feel lonely. Gaara seemed to understand somewhat. He was never a person to pry with other people's thoughts, but Naruto shared a special connection with him. How so? Quote. Naruto grinned, shaking his head. You would think it's stupid. Gaara shook his head. I don't think that's possible if I can't have a reason to think that. Naruto sighed. Well, of all of those billions of stars in the sky, I sometimes like to think that maybe 2 of them are my mom and Dad watching me. Gaara said nothing for a moment, but spoke after a few minutes of silence. I don't think that's stupid at all. Naruto turned to him. Really? Gaara nodded. I can relate to that in a way. I don't have a mother. Naruto frowned, but risked to dig a little deeper. What happened to her? Gaara let his eyes narrow a little as he stared at the crescent moon. She died giving birth to me as a result of the shukaku being placed inside me. Quote. Naruto nodded, and said nothing further. They seemed to share a silent understanding with each other, and the two found themselves comfortable with it. Naruto found he had someone he could relate to in so many ways, and considered the boy a friend. Gaara found Naruto's outlook on life interesting, and saw that the blonde truly could understand the troubles he went through as a child. They carried a burden within them that gave them extraordinary gifts and horrible curses at the same time. Both had a few special people in their life now, and would protect them with their lives if need be. Naruto eventually felt a yawn escape his body, and got up. He said goodnight to Gaara, and headed to the window to his room to get some sleep. Naruto. The blonde turned to see Gaara facing away from him, but he could tell that the shukaku holder was not ignoring him. Yeah. If you plan to court my sister, Kankuro and I have already agreed that you have our blessing. Quote. Naruto's face turned a shade of red. Oh okay. Hey, I'm not entirely sure I'm quite ready for a girlfriend but. Gaara turned to face him, and raised an eyebrow. Naruto was relieved to see no malice in his eyes. So. Neeson didn't propose you go on a date with her earlier this evening. Oh, and no, she simply offered to train me tomorrow in controlling my wind chakra better. Naruto explained. Gaara shrugged, and turned to face the moon again. Well, either way, should it happen, you have our blessing. And I might add that it would be in your best interest to take it, since she has quite a large list of possible suitors. If you wait too long, someone else may already start to court her. You just happen to be better liked by the family, so we don't mind if you're not officially courting her. Quote, Naruto seemed to realize that he was dealing with the Kage's daughter, and that she very well could have anyone she wanted in a sense. He was even more surprised to know that Gaara and Kankuro favored him over some rich lord's son or a wealthy merchant. Oh, well, thanks, Gaara. Gaara nodded, and with that, Naruto went inside. Truth was, the blonde didn't know what to think. A girlfriend? Was that possible for him? He recalled on several occasions that whenever he offered to take Sakura on a date, he was met with a fist to the face, followed by a mouthful of dirt and RGE lump on the head in most cases. Naruto lay in his bed for a while, and decided to let the idea be stored into the back of his mind for now. No sense in losing sleep over it. Still, Temari was a very beautiful kunoichi in his opinion. 7,777,777. Kakashi stood by an all too familiar stone. It was probably close to 2 in the morning, but he didn't really care. He usually only needed 5 hours of sleep per day and he would be fine. Besides, there was no training today since it was the team's day off. He doubted they would actually use it as a break though, they never had since Wave. Sakura had increased her chakra capacity by more than half since they came back to Konoha, which was saying a lot for her, and her taijutsu and genjutsu had increased by leaps and bounds. Sasuke even increased his Sharingan's tomo by 2, and his ninjutsu and taijutsu were nearly flawless. It did bring him joy to see that his students were improving so much, and he was even happier to see that he was able to help in doing that. Still, Team 7 was only 3/4 of what is truly should be. A major aspect of their team was gone, a very bright, cheerful, and amazingly comforting aspect. Naruto had been the guy that helped Sakura show her intelligence, the part that drove Sasuke to work harder, and the student that made every day a little different for Kakashi. He may have the smartest kunoichi and the top rookie of this year's CL, but he didn't have its most unpredictable ninja. He did find comfort in the fact that Sasuke was more sociable and that he wasn't so distant anymore. In fact, on several occasions, he actually offered to pay for lunch when they took a break from training, which usually meant eating at Ichiraku's. Ichiraku Ramen was quite well off, considering it had its regulars, but Tuki and Ayame were devastated when they first heard from Sakura and Sasuke at Naruto was no longer in Konoha. They of course didn't explain the whole thing, and had to make up a few things, but the point still hit home with the ramen stand, their favorite and best customer was not around anymore. One thing Kakashi noticed was the major change in the attitude of Sakura and Sasuke while they did train. They never complained anymore, even when they had to chase down the cat of the wife of the Fire Country's Dayamo. He even found out they set a record in catching the cat in only 2 minutes of locating the cat. Kakashi wondered how they improved so much, but he knew why. The look that Sasuke and Sakura exchanged when they realized that if they became Chunin that they could lead a platoon of ninjas said it all. They were improving so they could go and find Naruto. He was the force driving them so hard that even Sarutobi and Iruka noticed the vast improvement stated in their mission reports. Kakashi looked at the memorial stone. What would you have done, Minato-sensei? He asked, looking at the name of the Yondaime carved into the stone. He knew the answer though. Minato Namikaze wouldn't have messed up to begin with. Kakashi had been told by Sarutobi that the situation wasn't his fault, and that things like this can't be predicted. Kakashi disagreed. He believed that perhaps if he had spent a little more time teaching Naruto, if he had perhaps had been there for the boy when he was younger and given him the knowledge that someone cared about his existence, then maybe things would be different. He sighed, and stood up. Now he was going to lose sleep over this, he just knew it. Oh well, Sakura and Sasuke usually started training before he arrived anyway, so maybe he could actually use the excuse that he had slept in. They would probably not bother him about, seeing as they didn't always get the best of sleep either. Naruto, I hope I'll see you again. I promise I won't fail you twice. 7,777,777. Wait, so this kid is Minato's son. Huh, I wish I had known that sooner, said a certain toad sage. Yes, that is Minato's boy. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, and he's been missing for a little more than a month now, replied the Sandame. Jiraiya gave back the picture of Naruto to the elderly man, and then his face turned serious. That isn't good. I actually bumped into this kid about a week ago outside of Fire Country. Didn't recognize him without the crying and the seal freshly placed on his belly though. Quote, Sarutobi nodded. So, do you know where he was heading? Westward. Not sure where he is now though. Had I known who he was though, I wouldn't have told him that Sunagakure was in the direction he was heading. Replied the Sannin. Sarutobi pinched the bridge of his nose as he let out a tired groan. Suna. If Naruto had managed to cross the Wind Country's desert and had reached the hidden village of the Sand Shinobi, this whole mess had just become an international level problem as well. Jiraiya stated that Naruto wasn't wearing a Hittite, and that he wasn't sporting the usual orange jacket. Well, this leaves us with at least 3 possible scenarios. 1. Naruto is well beyond our reach, and has continued traveling beyond the 5 shinobi nations. 2. He's now in Suna, and possibly a shinobi of the hidden sand, or 3, he's dead. Sarutobi said as he lit his pipe. He got up from his chair and looked out over the night sky of Konoha, a troubled look on his face. Jiraiya didn't like seeing his former teacher in such a state. Hey, come on old man, the kid seemed pretty capable of himself. Besides, even if he's in Suna, you can always have them bring him back to us. I mean, they are in an alliance with us. If he's one of their shinobi, he may even appear here for the upcoming exam. Sarutobi nodded. It's highly unlikely, but I do remember that Naruto was always known for surprising people. Quote, the third Hokage blew out a plume of smoke, and reminded himself of how capable Naruto was. A boy who had lived on his own his whole life seemed very likely to still be alive, he thought. He silently prayed that the boy was okay, and that if he was continuing to grow strong. Minato had asked that the boy be seen as a hero, and Sarutobi wasn't a man to abandon a hero of the hidden leaf. Naruto focused on his opponent while a desert wind blew past. He took in a few deep breaths, and with speed unnatural for a human, sprinted towards his target. He quickly went through a few seals, and jumped into the air. His opponent remained unmoving as he finished with the final seal. Pulling back his right palm, he cried out with as much ferocity as he could muster, Wind style, wind blast jutsu. Quote, the enemy crumpled as a high-pressure gust of wind smashed into the sandy ground below him. He landed in a crouching position, and waited for the dust to clear. He remained alert, and his eyes scanned the area. Without warning, a hand of sand burst from beneath him, and grabbed a hold of his ankles. The coils of sand swung him around a few times before dumping him unceremoniously into a nearby dune. Naruto, you weren't focusing. Came the calm voice of Gaara. He closed his eyes as he went into a stance he had been working on with his blonde friend for about a month now. At Naruto's behest, Gaara decided that relying on his sand alone wasn't good enough. The boy was by no means a close-range fighter, but Gaara decided that after receiving the royal beating from the blonde that he should learn some taijutsu. Naruto wasn't that great in the area either, but with Baki supervising the two, they were able to learn from each other in the Veiled Man. The two boys went into a purely taijutsu-based fight, and they were going at it like never before. Naruto managed to get a few punches in with the style he picked up from Baki, while Gaara went through his own taijutsu variation that he learned from Naruto. The redhead was weighed down by his sand, so speed was not an option for him. Instead, he mingled his sand with his blows so that he could extend his reach with every punch and kick he dealt. It was quite unique. Baki couldn't deny that, but it wasn't a pure taijutsu stance. Needless to say, having Gaara punch you in the gut, and then have a follow-up from a fist-shaped clod of sand could send almost anyone flying. Naruto got up, and dusted himself off as he spit up some sand, Hey, it's not my fault that you're able to create a sand clone and hide your chakra from me. While I attack, we both know that your control over your chakra is only second to Konkuro's, and that's because he's older, and a puppet master needs to have good control in order to fight. Baki rolled his eyes as he saw where this was going. Gaara shrugged his shoulders. Maybe if you focused more on training your senses and less on what kind of restaurant you want to take Nei-san to, then this wouldn't happen. Naruto blushed, and growled a bit. Hey, we've only gone out 3 times in the last month. Oh, and for the record, she's the one who usually picks out where we go. It was true though. In the past month since he had been made a genin of the hidden sand, Naruto had become the luckiest guy in all of Wind Country, at least in his opinion, because he was officially the boyfriend of Temari N. Oh Sabaka, if I recall correctly, Gaara, Naruto had been forced to go to those fancy restaurants, and pay with his own money, too, spoke the older brother of the sand user. Konkuro had been watching the two for the last 15 minutes after he got done cleaning Crow's gears. It was a tedious task, but it kept his battle puppet in tip-top shape, not to mention that Temari kind of left Naruto with little say in the matter of if he wanted to date her or not. Gaara nodded. Yes, I'll admit it, even Nei-san can be scary when she wants something. Though I do admit, even though I've never had a girlfriend, saying you'll pound your significant other into the sand if they don't show up at a restaurant by 7 sharp is pushing it. Naruto rubbed his head, and despite the jabs the two were making at Naruto's manliness, he couldn't be happier. Temari was quite a tough girl when she needed to be, but she also had a gentle, kinder side too. Naruto was one of the few that knew that. Oh, he'd received the occasional kiss on the cheek from her, but her words were what made him swell with joy. Baki looked at his watch. Okay, Naruto, it's going almost 2 now. If you plan on working with Temari, you better hurry up. She may be your girlfriend, but she's still your tutor in wind jutsu. If you're late, I can't hold any responsibility for what she does to you. Quote. Naruto nodded. Okay, thanks for the help today, Baki-sensei. He then turned to Konkuro and Gaara. So, I'm guessing that we're eating at home tonight. Konkuro smirked. Naruto had been here for little over a month, yet he already called the Sabaka estate his home. Well, unless Temari has place. An's with you tonight, I would so. There's always barbecue if we don't make anything though. Gaara nodded. Well, I can always start making stir-fry for later. The 3 shinobi sweat dropped. Gaara, no offense, but last time you made stir-fry, you had the entire mansion clear out so we could wait for the smoke to dissipate. Konkuro said with a pat on the shoulder. Gaara looked at his brother, and frowned. So, am I that bad at stir-fry? Konkuro had to remind himself that Gaara had changed over the last month, and that being honest with his younger brother was the best option. Yeah. I will admit though, no one can come close to you when it come to desserts. Well, except for Temari. Gaara gave his brother a small smile. Then I shall make a cake for tonight. With that said, the 2 brothers headed home. Baki waved goodbye to Naruto, and headed off to his own quarters. Naruto sprinted to training ground 12 where Temari would be waiting for him. When Naruto finally arrived to his destination, he was surprised to see a smiling Temari sitting on a boulder. Good sign, Naruto thought. He unwrapped the cloth scarf from his face and let it flap around his neck. Temari had said that she didn't like him wearing it all the time, and he saw her point. She apparently thought that he was too handsome to hide his face like that, so he agreed that whenever they were alone or in their house, that he would let his face show. Hey, Naruto, how was training? She asked as she got up, give him a peck on the cheek. Naruto blushed. No matter how often she did that, he still wasn't used to female attention of this kind. Fine. Gaara whooped my butt though. I keep telling him that his sand fist taijutsu is not really pure taijutsu, and that if we went against each other based on pure strength that I would win. Temari smirked. Well, at least he's trying. He never used taijutsu before you came along. The sand coffin seemed to be effective enough for him. Naruto nodded. So, what did you want to teach me today? I've gotten the wind manipulation down pretty well, and I've been working on the wind blast jutsu every day. What else do we need to focus on right now? Temari smiled. She had to admit, Though he was nowhere near her in wind manipulation, but he was sure good at learning the necessities. He had so far mastered 4 techniques, and 2 were his own. The severing wind strike and wind blast jutsu were his own creation. Gaara had taught him the drilling air bullet, and Temari had taught him a variation of her rumbling wind wall jutsu that didn't involve a fan. He truly had become a great fighter, in her opinion at least. She still had quite a few techniques that she wasn't willing to teach him, but today was special to her. She was going to share a technique with him that only she used. Well, Naruto, today I'm going to teach you something that I think you may be ready for. Your chakra control should be sufficient enough for it, and I think it will fit in well with your affinity to wind. Temari said as the two took a seat in the gravel-like ground. Really? What is it? What is it? Naruto said, and couldn't help but grin. Temari was going to teach him another awesome jutsu, no doubt. Calm down, Baka, I haven't even told you what it is, she snapped while unfurling her fan to 3 moons. Tell me, Naruto, what do you know about summoning? Naruto pondered for a moment. Well, I know that usually it involves offering a little blood in order to call upon a summoned creature to help you in battle, or to do other tasks that would be more difficult for a shinobi to accomplish. Temari nodded. This would make things a lot easier for her if he knew a thing or two about summons. Good. Well, watch closely then. I'm not sure if it will change for you, but this is what I do to summon. Naruto watched as his blonde female companion bit her thumb, and spread some of the blood on her fan. She stood up, and with a swish of her fan yelled out, summoning jutsu. A wind blew as a cloud of smoke appeared. Naruto watched as the smoke cleared, and raised an eyebrow as Temari stood with a small weasel on her shoulder. It was a snowy white, and had a patch over one eye. It also seemed to be carrying a huge scythe in its paws, a scythe that he found much larger than the creature itself. Naruto, meet Kamatari. Naruto frowned. He doesn't look like a really powerful guy, but I guess if you're showing me him, he must be strong. Temari frowned as well. Naruto, what was the first rule I taught you about wind techniques? Naruto sighed. I know. Don't underestimate the power of the wind. It's just, well, I've heard of people summoning huge dogs, and toads, but he's a little weasel. Kamatari laughed. Hey, Temari, this your boyfriend? He still seems wet behind the ears. Temari sighed. Yeah, he's talented though, believe me. Listen, would you be willing to work a contract out with him? Kamatari thought about it for a moment, looking at the younger blonde with a judgmental look in his eyes. Sure. He seems good enough. Temari gave the weasel a hug. Thanks, Kamatari. You don't know how much this means to me. Kamatari gave the girl a confused look. I thought this was for the boy, not you. Quote. Temari smirked. Hey, do you know any other people that can summon you right now? The one-eyed weasel gave a nod. Ah, I see your point. Naruto quirked an eyebrow upon hearing the last part of their conversation. What do you two mean by that? Are you saying that only you can summon him? Temari gave the boy a proud grin. Darn right, I am. Kamatari's clan only allows one member of their clan to be summoned. Kamatari's that member. So, because of this, very few people can summon him. Not only that, but they have to have an affinity to wind. In the past, Kamatari's clan used to make contracts with the wind maidens of the desert. Wind maidens, Naruto repeated, giving Temari a confused look. Kamatari spoke. Yeah, they were a group of battle fan-wielding kunoichi back in the early days of shinobi. Temari is a sort of modern-day one, even though the actual group left the deserts years and years ago. She just happened to find out about how to summon us through the fan she uses, and she signed my clan's contract. She's the first human being to summon us in over 70 years. Naruto turned to Temari with an awestruck look. Whoa. That's awesome, Temari-chan. That makes you sort of an elite amongst wind users. Temari had the decency to blush. Please, I'm only a genin, Naruto. Baki-sensei is much more experienced at using wind nature chakra. I'm only teaching you so he can help work on your other needs, like your taijutsu. Kamatari chuckled. Hey, you're quite the sweet talker, aren't you, Naruto? Naruto simply gave the white weasel a confused look. Sweet talker. He was simply saying that Tamari was an awesome kunoichi, nothing else. So, Tamari said as she regained her composure, "Do you want to sign the contract, Naruto?" Naruto grinned. If Tamari summoned this Kamatari for fighting, then he must be good, yeah. Sign me up. Kamatari gave the boy a toothy grin. You sure? How about I give you a demonstration first of what I can do first? Naruto nodded, and Tamari stepped back as the weasel somehow floated in the air. Light blue flames floated around the weasel as he gripped his scythe. See that boulder over there? Watch. Naruto saw the weasel fly through the air with speed unnatural of an animal to this world. He swung his weapon a few times, and as he ped by the boulder, landed on the ground with amazing acefulness. Seconds later, the rock broke into clean-cut pieces. Naruto gawked at the creature, a starry-eyed look on his face. Whoa. You can cut through rock too. He ran up to the weasel, barely able to contain his excitement. Please let me sign your contract. Quote. The weasel looked over to Tamari, who had a somewhat concerned look on her face. She may have the right to summon Kamatari, but she couldn't make the weasel let others summon him as well. That was purely Kamatari's decision. I don't know. Kamatari decided to mess with the boy a little. He had made up his mind the minute Tamari mentioned the boy to him yesterday. Kamatari had been waiting for a long time to have a male summoner. He had nothing against female summoners, but he was always open for a little change. Naruto got down on his knees and bowed. Please, Kamatari. Your attacks are just like mine, and you use wind like me, too. Please, I'll do anything. Kamatari had to hold back the laughter. The boy was sure persistent, he gave him that. The battle-seasoned weasel summon had a knack for reading others' potential, and he knew right off the bat that the boy had an immense reserve of chakra. More than any of the previous summoners his clan had a contract with. He knew that the boy would prove to be a promising shinobi someday, so why not join him for the ride? I'll let you sign my contract. Naruto's eyes lit up, but Kamatari raised a paw, on one condition. Quote. What's the condition? Naruto asked, suddenly getting quiet. Kamatari leaned over to the boy's ear. You make sure that girl over there is happy. She's by far the most talented kunoichi I've seen that uses a battle fan in ages. She's told me quite a bit about you, and from what I hear, she's quite fond of you. Kamatari gave him a serious look. While it's not my place, being that I'm not from this land, she deserves a good man in her life. I've heard of what she's gone through, and you've made her happy for numerous reasons. Keep it that way, and I guarantee you and her won't regret it. Naruto blushed. Right, hey. So, is that the condition? Quote. Kamatari nodded, and pulled out a scroll from nowhere. Do I have your word on that? I won't make the contract void if the conditions are broken, but I can't guarantee that I'll be as willing to help you in battle if they are broken. Quote. Naruto gave the weasel a roaring smile. I promise, Kamatari. I'll make sure she's happy. Kamatari smiled. He was right about the boy after all, I thought so. Listen, since Tamari only use a fan to summon me, and you don't use a battle fan, you're going to have to learn how to summon me with Uda fan. There's 7 seals involved. They're in this order. Tora, Tatsu, Habi, Tori, Tatsu, Habi, Tori. Essentially, there's only 4 separate seals, but they must be made in that order for you to summon me. Got it. Naruto nodded, and the weasel looked to Tamari. Well, looks like we got ourselves a second summoner here. Tamari grinned as she watched Naruto sign the medium-sized scroll with his blood-stained fingerprints. Kamatari rolled up the scroll, and looked to the boy. Well, I suppose we should give you a try, Now, understand, if you do it wrong, nothing will happen. I'm the only summon in my clan, so if you don't put in the right amount of chakra, or if you mess up the seals, you won't summon me. So, make sure you know what you're doing. Right, I hear you. Naruto gave the weasel a thumbs up, and the weasel vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto bit his thumb, and went through the seals as told. Tora. Tatsu. Habi. Tori. Tatsu. Habi. Tori. Naruto channeled chakra into his hands, summoning jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Kamatari reappeared with a toothy grin. Haha, not bad, Naruto, not bad at all. Kamatari gave the boy a quick pod salute before vanishing again. Naruto grinned at seeing his success. He was officially a summoner now. Tamari-chan, thank you. I never thought I'd learn how to summon a cool animal like Kamatari. You're the best. Naruto smiled and was surprised to receive a squeezing hug from the blonde Kunoichi. No problem, Naruto, but it will cost you. Naruto stopped grinning. Cost me. Tamari gave the boy a mischievous grin, and Naruto knew it would probably be something embering. Well, for him at least, yeah. I want to go to a festival they're having tomorrow. Usually I don't go since there's no one I want to go with, and the loser guys who offer to take me don't even try to get to know me. They just walk around with me arm in arm as though I'm some kind of trophy. Quote. Naruto grimaced upon hearing this. How could any guy think of Tamari as anything less than an amazing girl and a powerful kunoichi? Naruto may not have had much experience with girls, but he did remember the third Hokage telling him once that you should always treat the opposite gender with respect, and that if you ever take a girl out on a date, that you make sure she enjoys it as much as possible. He laughed at the old man for telling him that, saying that, girls were weird because they talked about flowers and girly things. He was only 7 at the time though, so he had no idea that this would happen to him 5 years later. Now, he was trying to recall all those wonderful words of advice he picked up from the wise old man and from those few pages he read from magazines before the librarians always kicked him out. Tamari, would you like me to take you to the festival then? Tamari gave him one of her rare shy smiles. She may be a tough fighter, but she would drop her guard around Naruto. He was different than those other guys she had gone out with. He listened, made jokes, and tried to make her smile whenever possible. He truly meant it when he said that she was pretty. Aside from Naruto, no man alive had seen her act this way. I would like it if you could. Quote. Naruto only grinned more as he heard this. Sounds like a plan then. What time? Be ready at 6 tomorrow night. Make sure that you shower too, you tend to reek after training. She added and giggled as he pouted. Hey, I only smell like that because I really work hard when I train. He snapped back, trying to defend himself. She ruffled his hair. Of course, Naruto. Well, let's head back home. I'm starving. Quote. Oh, Tamari-chan, Gaara said he's baking a cake tonight. Naruto noticed Tamari's eyes light up a little as her pace suddenly quickened from a walk to a light run. Gaara's desserts were short-lived, since the redhead couldn't refuse anyone from eating them. Therefore, if any of the estate's servants asked to try one of his many works, he simply nodded and said they were welcome to do so. Tamari was happy that Gaara had become so nice in such a short time, but she really wished that sometimes he'd be a little more favoring for her happiness over others. Well, at least when it came to cake and cookies. 88,888,888. Sasuke breathed in and out heavily as he stood before a rock that was now slowly turning to cooled lava. He had definitely improved, according to Kakashi. A few weeks ago, the best he could get was slightly glossy features on one side of the boulder while the rest was blackened. Wow, good job, Sasuke, applauded the Uchiha's sole genin teammate. Thanks, Sakura. It's still not quite what I was looking for, but it's better. Sakura got up from her spot on the GR where she had been eating a bento box her mother had made. You hungry at all? I don't have much of an appetite right now, so if you want you can finish my lunch. Quote. Sasuke suddenly felt his stomach rumble with an animalistic roar. Yeah, sure. Sakura giggled as the Uchiha sat down and literally dug into the bento as he ate the fish and vegetables without stopping. Well, someone's been training hard today. Sakura and Sasuke both looked to see an all too familiar silver-haired man leaning against a tree. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Yo. The Junin waved to the pink-haired girl, then walked over to his duo of genin. So, how's the fire jutsu coming along, Asuke? Sasuke shrugged. It's better, but it's not great. I still have a long way to go with it. I managed to melt the boulder though, so it's definitely an improvement from a while back. Kakashi nodded, and mentally praised the Uchiha for focusing on his improvements instead of focusing on his flaws. While it was important to know your weaknesses, Sasuke had been a serious issue in regards to perfectionism a month back. Ever since Kakashi had upped the training with the two, Sasuke had begun to focus on not what was wrong, but what needed to be improved. It may sound like the same idea, but the attitude was the major difference. Good to hear. I'm sure you'll have it down in no time flat at the rate you're going. Make sure you keep up the taijutsu drills I told you about too. How about you, Sakura? Kakashi asked, turning his head to his female student. Well, I've gotten a little better at my genjutsu, but it's still not that powerful. Sasuke was able to break through it without activating his Sharingan twice out of the 10 times I used it on him. Sakura said as she looked at the ground. Kakashi was about to say something when Sasuke spoke first. Sakura, your genjutsu is actually quite strong for someone of our level. It just needs more work. I'm sure in due time that you'll be able to trap even Kurenai-sensei in it without her immediate notice. Kakashi smiled as he saw Sakura beam with a little pride. Sasuke had improved indeed. Instead of being withdrawn and unsupportive, he was giving Sakura encouragement and advice. Well, seeing as you're both done for the day, how about we go and get a bite to eat instead of bento? Your choice. Kakashi spoke with a masked grin. Ichiraku. They both said simultaneously. Kakashi expected this. They had been going there almost every day for lunch or supper. He suspected it had something to do with a member of their team that had been gone for about a month and a half. While Kakashi wasn't a huge fan of the food, he couldn't deny that it was good. Besides, it seemed to make Sasuke and Sakura feel better after a hard day of training. A few minutes later found the trio at the well-known ramen bar, and the two genin were eating with inhuman gusto. Well, Sasuke was, while Sakura was merely eating nibbles here and there. Kakashi had already finished his bowl before either of the two could see his face, much to their dismay. Kakashi-sensei. Quote. Came the quiet voice of Sakura. Yes. Sakura looked down into her bowl. Well, one know that. Naruto lived his whole life alone without a family, but, well, you were around before he was born, so. Do you know who his parents were by any chance? Kakashi gave the pink-haired girl a surprised look, and wasn't surprised to see Sasuke looking towards the Junin expectantly as well. Actually, yes, I knew both his father and mother on a personal basis. Quote. You did? Sasuke asked. Kakashi nodded. Yes, but there's a reason why his heritage isn't well known. Sakura decided to cut to the chase. Well, who were his parents? Why didn't he ever learn about them? Quote. Well, I don't know if it's my position to tell you who they were, but. Kakashi turned to Ayame. Ayame, do you think that I could borrow a pen and paper? Sure. Kakashi-san. Ayame went behind the counter, and handed the masked man said utensils. Kakashi quickly wrote two words on the paper, and casually slid the paper over to Sakura. The words were, Namikaze, and, Kushina. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. So, what do these two names have to? Kakashi put up a hand. Listen, Sasuke, I can't really openly divulge this information to you. However, being that you two are shinobi, you should be able to gather information on these two names. I will give you a hint, they belong to separate individuals. I can't tell you anything more than that though. You'll understand when you find out the answers. The two genin nodded, and after finishing their meals, headed off to the library. So, who do you think these two people are, Sasuke? Quote. The Uchiha shrugged. Don't know, but the name Namikaze sounds familiar, almost like it was a name that belonged to someone important. Sakura nodded, feeling the same about the name. It was setting off alarms in her head, but she couldn't put a tab on it. The two walked to the public archives section of the library, and began to look over the numerous scrolls. Namikaze. Namikaze. Nami-ah, here we go. Sakura said after she found a small scroll. She brought it over to a nearby table while Sasuke sat down across from her. They unrolled it, and read over the contents. As they scanned the contents, both of set of eyes widened. You don't think Kakashi-sensei was pulling our leg, do you? Sasuke frowned, but shook his head. This isn't something to joke around about. Besides, it says right here that this man trained Kakashi. The two looked over the scroll and shook their heads in disbelief. This is amazing. Naruto is the son of the fourth Hokage. Minato Namikaze. Sakura said in a whisper. Sasuke nodded. I never would have guessed, but it makes sense. You've seen the pictures of the man, they look alike now that I think about it. They scanned over the contents, and ran across the other name they were looking for, Kushina Uzumaki. It says that she lived with the fourth. She was born in the land of the whirlpool, and she was married to Minato Namikaze for a while before she died, the reasons aren't written why though. Sasuke furrowed his brow. The scroll said nothing about Naruto's birth, or that Kushina had a baby. So, the village kept that information a secret. Sasuke growled, so, Naruto deserves much better than what he got. He's the heir to a clan that had quite a bit of money and power in Konoha, now that I remember. Minato Namikaze was quite an amazing ninja. Sakura frowned. Not surprising, though, is it? The village treated him like trash for something he had no say in, though it makes a lot more sense as to why the Kyuubi was sealed in him of all children. Not only was he born on the night of the attack, but he was the son of the man who sacrificed himself for the village. Damn it. The Dobi is the son of a legend, the Yellow Flash, wait, that makes sense now. Why he wasn't ever informed of his heritage. Sakura seemed to catch on. Yeah, the Yellow Flash was hated by almost all of the Earth Country, and Iwagakure placed a flea on-site order for the man during the Third Secret Ninja War. So, the information was also protecting Naruto as well. Sasuke nodded. That's why he took his mother's name instead of his father's, I guess. Sakura sighed, and put the scroll back. She needed some time to take all this in. In the past 2 months Sasuke and she had learned 2 shocking, and also saddening, secrets about their missing friend's life. He was not only the container of the most powerful Biju in the world, but he also was the son of one of the greatest ninja to have ever lived. The two walked out of the library with a thoughtful silence between themselves. Sasuke was wondering how a guy with such a troubled childhood could have dealt with the pain for so long. The fact that Naruto was worthy of much better treatment because of who he was the son of made it even more disturbing. Sasuke was suddenly aware of just how much Naruto never had in his life. He never had a chance to be rocked to sleep by a mother, or taught how to throw a kunai by your father, or to be walked home from the academy by your older brother. Sasuke still thought about avenging his clan, and until he did, he wouldn't feel truly at peace with his life, but for now, he could try and focus on goals that were also important, like preparing for the upcoming Chunin exams, which was only a little less than a month from now. Once he became a Chunin, he would look for leads on the blonde, and hunt him down, and drag him back if he had to. Sakura was now even more saddened by the background of Naruto's life. First off, he was shunned by his own village for a reason that should have been respected at the very least. He was the only thing keeping the Kyuubi from wreaking havoc on the Hidden Leaf, and the rest of the world. To make things even worse, he was a child of a former Hokage, if not the greatest one of all. He could have been so much happier if he had his parents, if not at least his mother or father. She didn't even try to imagine the pain of living a life alone, it was hard to think of for her. Her mother was her only living parent, but at least she still had someone. Naruto had never had anyone greet him when he came home, and he never had anyone to say they cared about and that they loved him. Humans are social animals, she thought. If a person is rejected by society, it can have horrible effects on a person's psyche. Why, Sasuke? The boy in question turned to his teammate, and shook his head as they slowly walked down the main road. I don't know. But it isn't right. Sakura tried to hold back tears, but failed. She didn't know why she was crying, maybe it was because she really wished that the blonde was back. Team 7 was a second family to her, and right now her little brother was missing. It hurt. Why did he have to deal with that pain for so long? You know, now that I think of it, I never saw him bring any food with him during lunch back in our academy days, and he usually never played with anyone. All the kids just chased him away, but they never knew why they were supposed to hate him. Her shoulders were trembling as she continued, it's not fair, Sasuke. He couldn't help it. Sasuke didn't know what to say. He hadn't dealt with someone crying for a long time. He decided to put an arm around her shoulders. Sakura, listen, when we pee the exams, we'll bring him back. Okay. Sakura looked up from the ground, and sniffled a bit. Why, you truly believe that we can do it? Quote. Sasuke gave her his best smile, which was a gentle smirk in some ways. Sakura. I've come to realize that without Naruto around, things are different. I don't know why, but something tells me that he's still out there, and that wherever he is, we'll see him again. I don't want to lose that feeling. Sakura smiled. You're right, Sasuke. Naruto's tough, and he would find a way to survive. Sasuke tensed a bit as she leaned her head against him. Thanks, Sasuke. I needed that. Sasuke simply nodded and gave a grunt, though the look on his face was clearly a slight hue of red. Sakura eventually put space between the two again. So, tomorrow at 9. Sasuke nod. Sounds fine. I imagine Kakashi-sensei will be there by noon. We may have a mission or two though, so who knows about training. Sakura smiled. Well, all the more reason to get our training in. She turned down a street towards her neighborhood. Bye, Sasuke. Quote. Sasuke waved a farewell as he continued down the less populated section of town. The Uchiha compound loomed ahead, quietly awaiting his presence. Sasuke suddenly stopped as he turned. Something wrong, Kakashi-sensei? Quote. The Junin gave a wave to the raven-haired boy, just wondering how your little research project went. Sasuke frowned. We found out enough to figure it out. Kakashi nodded. Good. You want to ask me anything about it? Quote. Sasuke nodded. I don't know where to begin, but I guess I can ask one question. Why? Why what? Sasuke sighed. Why did they not tell him? Why didn't they give him what he rightfully deserves to know? He's a Namikaze, and he should have a small fortune and access to numerous scrolls at least. The Yondaime was a great ninja, and I know his wallet showed for it. Kakashi merely raised an eyebrow. Why indeed, Sasuke? Why would the village council deny Naruto, the boy who holds that within him, any source of wealth or position of power in the decisions made for the hidden leaf? Sasuke frowned. I get your point. Are they truly that blinded by what he contains within him? Unfortunately, most of them are. A few know the truth, but don't care. To them, the boy's a hindrance to their power, so keeping him at bay is the best idea. Kakashi replied with a slow nod. Well, once I finally take my place in the council, I'll make sure that this matter is taken into account when Sakura and I bring Naruto back to Konoha. Sasuke spoke with a determined tone. The silver-haired Junin gave a rare surprised look. He had never seen the Uchiha so certain in his words, aside from avenging his clan, ever in the time he had trained Team 7. The boy had truly grown. Well, Sasuke, I can't officially say anything against the council. But unofficially, I can hope that you use your power in the council as you intend to. Sasuke nodded, and began to walk towards his home. Kakashi watched the boy go, and smiled lightly. Perhaps there was still a possible future for the Uchiha that offered some happiness after all. Kakashi made a seal and vanished in a whirl of leaves. He was glad that he had gave the information on Naruto's family to Sakura and Sasuke. The two were truly set on become Chunin, and they were showing promising signs of achieving the rank. Little did Team 7 know, but within a month's time, their worlds were going to go through some serious changes. Orochimaru sat behind the Cage's desk with a content look on his veiled face that he had stolen. He was quite surprised with all the information he had managed to obtain from the records and spies within Suna that were actually from Otogakure. He had found out almost immediately that Naruto Uzumaki, or Naro Uzaki as he was being called at the moment, was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. This made his plans much more wonderful for the Hidden Leaf's downfall. However, there was a major wrench thrown into his scheme. Gaara no Sabaku was no longer a cold-hearted killer. Orochimaru had seen the boy himself come in with a plate of cinnamon rolls one morning and hand them out to the number house ninja in charge of keeping records and handing out missions. The scene, while comical to see the staff cautiously take the morning sweets with wary thank yous, also meant Orochimaru would have to find a different source of firepower for the main attack. He had that covered though now, he thought with a serpentine grin. Konoha would burn to the ground within the next 2 months. 9,999,999. Naruto, Temari, Kankuro, Gaara, and Baki were heading towards the gates of Konoha within 3 days. While Naruto had taken much longer when he left Konoha, this was due to him having to keep a low profile within Fire Country. Now though, he was Naro Uzaki, the rookie genin of Suna Team 4, paired with Gaara. Temari and Kankuro were Team 3, and this caused some frustration with Temari. She had complained about it, but Baki said that the Cage himself had ordered it. She said nothing afterwards. Naruto, on the other hand, was not thinking of that at the moment. As the wooden gates of Konoha loomed in the distance, he began to tense up. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to his left to see the smiling face of Kankuro. Don't worry, we've got your back, so don't worry. Okay, Naruto gave a somewhat relieved grin behind his white scarf covering his nose and mouth, and cheeks. He would have opted for a genjutsu to change his features, but he wasn't that good at holding such a technique for extended periods, and he felt more comfortable with something solely de-blocking his identity. Luckily enough, his ID didn't require his face to be shown, just a simple picture of his scarved face. He was quite content with that. Alright you four, we're in Konoha now. I expect you to represent Suna with the best of your abilities, and give it your best. You're free to roam town, just stay out of trouble, and be at the designated hotel areas for us by 7, understood? Quote. The four nodded, and Baki turned to Temari. Oh, and Temari, if you decide to sneak Naro out for a moonlight walk like you did while we were helping guard that caravan 2 weeks ago, I'll have to make Gaara keep a watch over you. The eldest Sabaku siblings looked to her youngest brother to see him simply nod. Darn it, she suspected Kankuro was involved in this as well. Temari pouted, but said nothing. He was right, that C-rank mission almost turned into a disaster when Temari had made Naruto go with her on a walk at night. When they returned around 1 in the morning, Baki almost attacked them. As they entered Konoha, the guards checked their IDs and nodded with approval. Naruto gave out a relieved sigh as they walked down the streets. He immediately had a wave of nostalgia run through him, and he couldn't help but take in a deep breath as he breathed in the slightly forested air. Naro, are you going to be okay here? Gaara asked as the group of 4 genin and 1 junin walked to the hotel. Naruto smiled behind his scarf. I'll be okay, Gaara. I'm just remembering some things. Gaara nodded and turned to look at the Hokage monument. So, is that the place you managed to paint on? He asked in a slightly quieter tone. Naruto simply nodded, and if one looked closely, they would have seen Gaara smirk a little. Kankuro chuckled while Temari said something about immature boys. Baki simply rolled his eyes, wondering how such a talented kid like Naruto ever wound up being such an idiot at the same time. As the group stopped at their hotel, Baki turned to them. Okay, Naro, Gaara, Kankuro, you'll be sharing room 127, Temari, you'll have room 128. I'll be a couple rooms down in room 144, so if you need me later on I should be there. Now, I have to go report to the Hokage Tower about our arrival. Since we're going to be 2 of the 3 two-man teams in the exams, I have to do a few bits of paperwork. Konoha is having a team of 2 enter as well, apparently they're missing a teammate. He looked over to Naruto. Be careful kid. I don't know if you're a nuke nin or not, but either way, you could get into some serious trouble if found out. Stay safe, and stay together. With that, he went towards the Hokage Tower. Kankuro took a look around. So, anything worth doing here? Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Oh yeah. There's a real cool place where they make ramen called Ichiraku's. The training grounds are okay, my team. Temari smacked him over the head. Naro, don't blow your cover. She said in a harsh whisper. Hey, right, sorry. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed his head. The group went down a turn in the main road, only to have Kankuro get bumped into by a kid. Naro immediately stiffened as he recognized the kid as Konohamaru and his 2 friends Udon and Moegi. Ow, said the young Sarutobi. Kankuro looked at the kid as he frowned. Darn kids. Hey, watch where you're going next time. Quote. Kankuro said as he gave the 3 an annoyed, albeit non-threatening look. He had dealt with Naruto for too long to lose his temper on some annoying little brats. Oh, sorry about that. I was being chased by this scary pink-haired girl when. Scary. That's it, you die now, Konohamaru. For the last time, Sasuke and I are not dating. Naruto was no wide-eyed. Of all the rotten luck. Sakura, calm down, He was only teasing you, came the quiet voice of Sasuke Uchiha, who was following behind a fuming Sakura Haruno. The two genin stopped and looked at the four Sunanin. Are you four here for the exams? Sakura asked. Tamari decided to answer, that's right. We're from Sunagakur, and we're going as two separate teams. Quote, really? We're also a two-man team. Sasuke replied with sudden interest, I'm Sasuke Uchiha, and this is Sakura Haruno. Tamari nodded, shadowing her worry for Naruto's safety with a grin, yep, I'm Tamari, and these three are Kankuro, Naro, and Gaara. Quote, the two-leaf nin looked over the other three Sunanin, and Naruto noticed Sasuke's eyes halt on the blonde for a few seconds. Well, Naruto luckily had his hair mostly covered by his Hitai-ite bandana, so he was not too noticeable. He hoped. Sakura eventually looked at Naro as well, and her eyes seemed to squint a little before she nodded, well, I'm sure we'll meet again. Gaara responded, I'm sure we will. It was nice to meet you too. The four Sunanin began to walk past the group and down the road. Hold on, came the voice of Sasuke. Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara all unconsciously moved around Naruto while making it look like they were simply turning around to look at the Uchiha. What? Came Kankuro's reply. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, and looked at Naruto. Naruto forced every bit of willpower to make it look like confusion instead of fear. Sasuke may have recognized him. Sasuke eventually stopped, and deactivated his bloodline, Naro. Naruto tried to deepen his voice a little, yeah. Sasuke was quiet for a minute or two before he talked, you seem familiar. Tamari scoffed, well, unless a little leaf nin like you has been to Suna, I'm sure you never met Naro. He's lived in Suna his whole life. Naruto nodded, yeah, I'm a sand nin after all. Sasuke and Sakura seemed to want to ask more questions, but decided not to. Sasuke nodded, right, well, we'll see each other again soon then. And with that being said, Sakura, Sasuke, and the Konohamaru Corps continued on their way. After a few minutes as the four walked down the road, Kankuro looked to Naruto, hey, you okay? Naruto shook his head, I knew those two genin. Quote. The three siblings all looked at their blonde friend, and Gaara asked, who are they? Naruto looked around a bit, then spoke in a hushed tone, those two are my former teammates, the ones I told you three about. Quote. Tamari nodded, you had an Uchiha on your team. Even in Suna the famous Uchiha clan was known about, though from what the Hidden Sand had heard, the clan was almost entirely wiped out. Naruto nodded, yeah, he seems to be less of a jerk than I remember though, and Sakura wasn't being all lovey-dovey around him. I wonder why, though. The four finally arrived at the ramen stand, and Naruto had to keep himself from shouting out with joy. He instead walked in and was greeted by a smiling Ayame, hello, welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto nodded, pleased to see some things hadn't changed while he was gone, we heard this is a good place to eat. Quote. As the four Suna genin took their seats, Tsuki walked out, you four here for the Chunin exams. Tamari smiled, that's right. We're actually two separate teams. Me and my brother Kankuro here are one team, and my youngest brother Gaara is paired with Naro here. Quote. Tsuki and Ayame nodded, and after that took the foursome's orders. Naruto unfortunately forgot that he had been a legendary eater of the wonderful noodle dish, so when he ordered 5 bowls of miso to start things off, Tsuki and Ayame both paused. Something wrong? Naruto asked, eyes giving a concerned look. Tsuki shook his head, sorry, it's just, well, we had a customer that used to start off his meals here in a similar manner. He was one of our best customers, then one day he went on a mission and never came back. We don't know what happened to him. Really? What was his name? Tamari asked, trying to draw attention away from her boyfriend. His name was Naruto. Ayame answered, and both of the ramen stand workers had a saddened look on their faces. He was a wonderful guy, even though he had a very rough life. We would have been giving his meals to him for free most of the time if it wasn't for the fact that he insisted on paying. He was truly a great guy. Naruto gave the two a sad look, oh. Well, I'm sure he's okay. I mean, he sounds like he was a ninja, so I'm sure he's alright. Tsuki and Ayame nodded, then went to make the orders. After having about 12 bowls of ramen, and having to explain himself by stating he hadn't eaten in 3 days, Naruto left with a full stomach. And a heavy conscience. He didn't know that the old man and his daughter cared so much about him. Naro, do you think you could show us around the village? It may prove to be entertaining. Gaara suggested, and received a nod from his blonde companion. Kankuro and Temari decided that was a good idea, so they went along. Naruto showed them the training grounds, and told them a few things he remembered about his numerous days of training here. Eventually they reached a place that Naruto had been telling was dedicated to all of the shinobi who had died in duty, or the memorial stone, when the blonde stopped dead in his tracks. Naro, what's? Kankuro was cut off as Naruto pointed ahead at a man with silver hair, his back turned to them as he was standing by the memorial stone. Who is that? Temari whispered, almost inaudibly. Naruto waved a hand, which stated, I'll tell you later, and was intending to turn around and led them away when they heard a voice, oh, you four must be the two-man teams I've heard about from Suna. Quote, Naruto stopped, and bit down a curse. He could get past Sasuke and Sakura, and Tsuki and Ayame as well. However, he wasn't so sure about the famous Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan Eye. Gaara seemed to sense his friend's distress, so he spoke, that is correct. We are teams 3 and 4 of Sunagaker. I'm sorry if we were disturbing you. Kakashi waved a hand of dismissal, no worries. I was getting ready to leave anyway. Temari's eyes suddenly widened in recognition, why you're... Kakashi. The Junin smiled behind his mask, ah, I see you've looked me up in the bingo book. Yes, I'm Kakashi Hatake, otherwise known as the Copycat Nin, or Sharingan Kakashi. Pleased to meet you. He gave them a curt wave with a crinkled eye signaling a smile. Kankuro nodded, never thought we'd see a living legend like you. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head as he chuckled, haha, I guess I forget how big my reputation is. Well, I am a leaf nin, so what better village to find me in than here, right? The four genin nodded, and Naruto noticed Kakashi's eyes fall on his own before he smiled. Before anything could be said towards Naruto, Temari spoke, well, Kakashi-san, it was a pleasure to meet you. If you don't mind, we must get going. Kakashi nodded, and his eyes fell on Naruto again before he spoke, oh, well, I guess I'll be heading off as well. My team doesn't like waiting more than 2 hours for me anyway. With that, he vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, that was too close. Kankuro looked at Naruto again, don't tell me you know Kakashi Hatake too. Hey, he was my sensei. Naruto said as he received 2 surprised looks and 1 slightly raised eyebrow from Gaara. Temari took a step forward, wait a minute, you're saying that the legendary copycat ninja was your Junin sensei? Question mark quote. Naruto could only laugh, in all fairness, he never told us about his accomplishments, and he is a really lazy guy if you must know. The 3 Sand siblings continued to stare at Naruto, until Kankuro spoke, man, Naro, you are full of surprises. Quote, 9,999,999. Sasuke and Sakura stopped at Kakashi's house and stood outside his door. After knocking for 2 whole minutes, the silver-haired man opened the door and raised an eyebrow, what are you two doing here? Quote, we need to talk. Sasuke replied. Sakura nodded with a serious look, it's about one of the Suna nin that has arrived here. Kakashi's eyes narrowed for a second, then he nodded. So, he wasn't the only one who noticed something off about one of the foreign nin. As the 3 walked into the living room of his cozy house, he smiled, either of you want something to drink? Sakura smiled, mint tea would be nice. Water. Came Sasuke's reply. Kakashi nodded, and walked into the nearby kitchen. As he put the kettle on the stovetop and turned on the burner, he noticed Sasuke frowning. Sasuke, Sakura, though I do like having your company, I need to ask why you two are here. It's just not that common for people to stop over. Kakashi inquired as he walked back to the living room with a GL of water. Sasuke nodded, but much to Kakashi's surprise, Sakura was the one to talk, Kakashi-sensei. I think he's back. Kakashi set down the GL he was holding on the coffee table that he had with him, really? Quote. Sakura nodded, and continued, Sasuke used his Sharingan, and the Suna nin we met had very similar eye to what Naruto had, he was kind of short too. Sasuke looked up. I think he's joined the hidden sand. He has a white cloth scarf around his face, a light brown vest with a gray shirt and pants, and his hair was covered by his bandana Hitai, but I saw a few blonde locks poking out in the front. Kakashi decided to confess to them, you're probably right Sasuke. I noticed that too. His two students looked up with open mouths. Yes, I met the four ninja too, and I must say, I was quite surprised to see him. Quote. You told him that knew it was him. Sasuke shouted, startling both Sakura and his sensei. Relax, Sasuke, I didn't let him know. That would cause problems. Kakashi said, raising a hand to silence the Uchiha. Sasuke calmed down, and let out a HN, as he sat back in the chair. So, Kakashi-sensei, what do we do? Do we report this to the Hokage? Sakura asked, a worried tone etched into her voice. Already did that, Kakashi replied. What? What did the Hokage say? Sakura said, panic rising again. Kakashi shrugged. The third simply said that he would make sure to keep this between the four of us, and that when the exams start that he would see what he could do. Naruto's still a leaf nin, if you remember. Do we confront him if we see him? Sasuke asked, folding his hands together in a thoughtful pose. No, leave him be. We both know why he left, and it wasn't out of anger or hatred. It was to protect Konoha. It seems he just happened to be unlucky enough to be placed on a team that was selected for the Chunin exams. Kakashi answered with another shrug. That's when the kettle began to whistle, and Kakashi got up to get Sakura her tea. When he came back with a hot cup for Sakura, Sasuke looked out the window. Kakashi-sensei. I know you may have your reasons, but why do you have the Sharingan? Kakashi looked over to Sasuke, and sighed. His features, well, his eyes, seemed to become saddened. He slouched a bit in his couch. It's a long. We've got nothing else to do, Kakashi-sensei. I hope we're not being rude, but we've been a team for a while and well, we hardly know anything about you. You're practically family, Kakashi-sensei, we'd like to know. Sakura added after taking a sip of tea. Kakashi sighed, and gave them both a sad smile. He truly did care for the two of them, so he decided that they deserved to know. Back when I was AG Enin, I was part of a team during the Third Shinobi War. Minato Namikaze was my sensei, and my teammates were named Rin and Obito Uchiha. 9,999,999. Tomorrow the Chunin exams would start, and Gaara and he would be one of the two Suna teams registered in it. In all truth, all four of them would be helping each other in any way possible. He heard a knock at his door, and walked over to open it. He was surprised to see Baki standing there. Baki-sensei. What's up? Quote. Baki nodded. Evening, Naro. I hope I didn't disturb you. No, I was just relaxing. Don't want to go overboard on training before the exams. Naruto smiled, having taken off his scarf for the evening. Do you want to come in? Actually, I just wanted to tell you that I'm glad to have you as a student. You've really improved as a ninja. The Junin replied, giving a small grin. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Are you okay, Baki-sensei? I mean, you've never been mean, but you never act like this. Baki chuckled, just giving you a wish of good luck. I seriously expect great things from all four of you, especially you and Gaara. Naruto nodded. Okay. Well, thanks, Baki-sensei. Baki gave Naruto a farewell, and walked down the hall as Naruto went back to his room. As soon as he heard the room door close, Baki frowned. He had just received word from Suna about the final verdict on the Casecage's decision. The invasion was green for go, and in another month, things would be less than peaceful in this village. How could he tell Naruto that he was to invade his home, and kill his old friends? He knew that despite what Naruto went through, the boy still cared for his home, just like any honorable shinobi would. Damn it. I sometimes wonder how I got suckered into being a Junin sensei. The veiled man sighed, continuing to his own room to retire for the night. He was going to need a vacation after all of this was over. 9,999,999. Tamari walked up to room 127, and swallowed nervously. She didn't know why she was so nervous about this. This was Naruto for crying out loud. She forced in some air, let it out, and knocked. The door opened to reveal a face paintless Kankuro, Tamari. Hey, what's up? Tamari looked to the ground, and whispered, is Naro in there? Kankuro smiled a genuine smile. Tamari, I know they say there's death in the exams, but come on. We're Suna Nin. He'll be okay. Tamari nodded. I know, but, can you please go get him? She gave him a rare concerned look, and he simply nodded. Naro, Tamari wants to talk to you. Kankuro called into the room, and a moment later, Naruto was standing at the door in a black t-shirt with aura. NGE boxers. Hey, Tamari-chan, it's 11 o'clock, anything wrong? The blonde boy asked, a curious tone in his voice. Tamari shook her head. I'm fine, Naro. I just wanted to talk to you. Why don't we go to my room? More privacy that way. She said, nodding to the room on the opposite wall labeled 128. Naro blushed a little, but nodded. Before they shut the door, Gaara called back, Naro, be back before midnight, we're waking up at 7 in the morning. Quote, Naruto sighed. Gaara was like a parent in some cases ever since he changed. Sure thing, Gaara. The two walked into Tamari's room, and shut the door. Naruto turned around when he walked into the room to see Tamari sitting on her bed already and her hands clenched around her nightgown at her niece. Naro immediately knew something was wrong. Tamari-chan. Tamari looked up at him, and gave him a strained grin. I'm fine, Naruto. And Kankuro's outfit is this season's most popular style in Teen Kunoichi. Tamari-chan, you can tell me. Tamari's bottom lip quivered a bit, and she was screaming inside her mind to stop. She couldn't though. Naruto was too important to her for her not to worry. Naruto. I'm worried about you. Naruto gave her a confused look. What about me? Do I look sick? Tamari laughed. No, it's not anything to do with you specifically, it's more about you being in Konoha, and the exams. Quote, Naruto smiled. Oh, well, don't worry about me. All four of us are going to kick butt in the exams. Kankuro's got a few jutsu to fall back on if he can't use his puppets. You're the strongest kunoichi I've ever met, and Gaara's gotten a lot stronger and faster, not to mention he doesn't have blood lust anymore. He stretched his smile into a full-blown grin. We'll do great. It's not just that. What if they find out who you are? I mean, you're a missing nin, and that's grounds for execution. I don't want to see you get killed or arrested. They'll kill you, and I'll be alone again. She couldn't hold it back anymore. These past 2 to 3 months had been some of the happiest days of her entire life. Naruto Uzumaki had come into her life, half alive and covered in sand. She took him into Suna, expecting to simply recruit another genin for cannon fodder, but ended up taking in the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. A boy who had never been loved, never known the joy of a family. Just like her. Well, Kankuro loved her like a brother, but still, she never had a loving father, and her mother died giving birth to her youngest brother Gaara when Tamari was barely able to form a full sentence. Naruto had changed everything for her, and all of Suna. He brought Gaara out of the darkness, and changed the outlook on his life for the better. All Naruto asked for in return was food, shelter, and a team. Well, not even a team, that had been Tamari's idea. Naruto was stunned. He never knew that Tamari felt like that without him. He sat next to her on the bed, and held her, receiving an immediate bone-cracking hug. Tamari-chan. Why didn't you tell me you felt like this sooner? How long have you been worrying about this? Tamari stopped crying and leaned her head against the shorter boy. I've been thinking about this ever since we left Suna. I realized just how much danger you're in right now. You left Konoha, and then you joined Suna. It's not exactly the best thing for a young genin to do. Naruto nodded. Tamari, I made my choice, and I know that if I had wanted to that I could have turned down the chance to enter the exams. But I felt that I was ready. Tamari smiled. Naruto. Naruto put a hand up to interrupt. Tamari, we're shinobi. We need to be ready for anything, right? She sighed. You're right. Naruto chuckled a bit. Was that all you were worried about, Tamari-chan? She smiled with a slight blush. Not really, but most of it was about that. Naruto edged his head to the side. What else was on your mind? Quote. She looked down. This is what she was worried about, saying this could determine how the rest of her days with Naruto would be like. She mumbled something, but Naruto didn't catch it. What was that, Tamari-chan? Quote. I love you, she said in a voice barely above a whisper. Naruto froze in place, and looked at her with shining blue irises. What? I said I love you, Naruto, she said, and took in a deep breath to continue. You're the sweetest guy I've ever met. And no, I'm not just saying that. Even after all the things I make you go through, you still are happy to be with me. I have to admit, I'm a bit demanding in a relationship, I won't deny that. I mean, yes, we've been dating. But that's just it. Only boyfriend and girlfriend, nothing more. I feel so much more from you than that though. Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had practically stopped listening when she said she loved him, Tamari-chan. Quote. She raised a hand. Just let me finish, I need to get this out, okay? Naruto nodded. Naruto, I feel a sense of joy and comfort when I'm around you. As cliché as it sounds, it's true. No one has ever made me feel like this. She smiled at him, and grabbed his hands. Naruto, you're the first person that's made me feel genuinely happy in ages, thank you. You've helped my life become better, and helped my family as well. I owe you a debt I can never truly repay. However, I just want you to know that you are the only boy I have eyes for, and I want you to know that. No one else can compare to what you have. Naruto was tearing up now. He wasn't sure if he was ready to hear this though. How can you love me, Tamari-chan? He was falling back to his old 7-year-old self. Everyone hates me. No matter who I see, they look at me with disgust. I don't want you to go through with that, Tamari. Besides, I'm not rich or famous either. You could have so many better choices than me. You're the daughter of the cage for crying out loud. Why would you go for an orphan genin when you can be with almost any junin or lord in all of Wind Town? Try. Naruto's eyes dimmed a bit. Besides, none of them are monsters or beasts. The slapping sound resonated throughout the room as Naruto fell off the bed and onto the floor. He looked up to see a very angry and very upset Tamari no Sabaku with tears in her eyes. Stop that. Quote. Stop Stop saying that you're a monster, beast, or whatever relates to the demon inside of you. She let the tears fall. Naruto, you know that you aren't the Kyuubi. You are so much more than that. You may hold it within you, but you are not a demon. To use that awful power for a cause like protecting me, my brothers, and Suna, that is not what a demon would do. No, you are a hero, Naruto. You may not know it, but more than a few Junin and Chunin in Suna are aware of what you did. They felt the chakra, and they know it was like Gaara's, yet they saw you use it for a righteous cause. That's what separates demons from heroes. Naruto was once again speechless as Tamari gave him a hand and pulled him back up to the bed. You really mean that? Tamari nodded. Yes, and I know you will never be a monster, you promised me that. Naruto nodded. That's right, and I never go back on my word, Tamari. The older blonde noticed Naruto's voice was laced with worry. Yes, Naruto. Quote. Do you really mean that when you say you love me? Tamari laughed, but then realized that Naruto was serious, so she gave him a warm smile as she looked into his eyes. Naruto. I truly love you. Not some stupid infatuation, but real, honest to good love. This isn't a family love either. I see you as more than family to me. Naruto was shaking a bit, and he admitted to himself that he was scared. He had no idea how to react to such a statement. Someone loved him. Tamari saw him, and smiled. You not sure how to take this, Naruto nodded. Naruto, what does your heart tell you? Naruto sat on the bed, looking at the floor. I feel happy about this. But, it's just that, no one has ever said that to me. Well, then consider me the first to tell you. I'll say it as long as I can. I love you. Naruto soon felt his own eyes tearing up, and he held the older blonde close. Tamari-chan. Quote. Tamari smiled as she practically cradled the younger boy. 2 years difference was the gap between them, but right now, Tamari felt like a much younger part of Naruto was being seen, the young orphan part of Naruto that never received any attention or care from anyone. Naruto was soon sobbing a bit, while trying to stifle the crying he was making. "Thank you, Tamari-chan, I love you too," he whispered after he finally stopped. The two sat in each other's arms for about 5 minutes before Tamari finally let go. "Well, that's about all I wanted to say." Naruto laughed a bit, wiping away a few tears on his cheek. "Haha, well, glad you told me." The Wind Maiden smiled at him. "Naruto, make sure to wake up early. We've got a big day tomorrow, and you know how Gaara gets when everyone else sleeps in while he hardly gets a wink." Naruto nodded, and walked to the door. "Right, I'll get to bed as soon as I can." He opened the door, but was surprised when he felt an arm get pulled back. He looked to see Tamari right next to him. Tamari bit her lower lip nervously, then hesitated. She slowly inched closer to Naruto's face, and then captured him in a kiss. No tongue, just a simple, chaste kiss. Naruto's eyes were wide as can be as Tamari was lip-locked with him. He slowly managed to return the favor in his inexperienced way, and eventually the two parted. "So, do I get to expect those from you more often?" Naruto inquired, earning a bop on the head from Tamari. "Baka, don't ruin the moment, and if you must now, yes, expect more of them from now on," she said while winking at him. 9,999,999. Naruto came back to room 127 with a small smile on his face. He looked to see Gaara sitting on the sofa watching a cooking show with a mildly amused expression. Kankuro was snoring in his bed. It was about 10 to midnight. "Naruto, glad to see you're back. I was worried that I would have to break down the door and risk seeing things that I would later regret." Quote. Gaara said, and Naruto immediately caught on to the sand user's joke. "Very funny, Gaara. Nothing happened like that if you must know. Tamari did tell me something very important though," Naruto said with a yawn. Gaara turned to the blonde. "What was that?" "She said she loves me. She meant it too," Naruto said as he crawled into his bed, and pulled the sheets over himself. Gaara raised an eyebrow, but soon smiled a little. Naruto had made Tamari happy, and Naruto was happy as well. He wasn't by any means romantic, but Gaara knew that people who care for each other were usually happy together. The two seemed to be no exception. As Gaara heard the quiet snoring of Naruto, he thought of how things had changed so much over the past 2 months and some odd weeks. Naruto Uzumaki had indeed been the greatest thing to happen to the sand user's family. Gaara continued to watch the show as the chef began to cut the fish he had into various pieces. He took a pen and paper next to him and began to write down notes. He had seemed to gain an interest in culinary arts, it seemed. Partly due to Naruto wanting only to eat ramen, which was a rarity in Suna. Gaara decided that while ramen was good in its own right, it wasn't the greatest thing for you. He therefore took it upon himself to learn how to cook. So far, he was good at baking, and that was about it. He was bound and determined to get better at preparing dinners though. "Add half a tablespoon of juice into the sauce," Gaara said to himself as he wrote down the instructions. He wouldn't be going to bed anytime soon, so why not make the time worthwhile? 9,999,999. The following morning the four had a quick meal provided by the hotel, and after some preparations and self-checking of all gear they needed being present. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they went as two separate groups to the Konoha Academy where they were to begin the exams. Naruto and Gaara were to report to the 3rd floor and wait there. Naruto and Gaara were standing in front of a small group of genin that were trying to get into the room being blocked by 2 chunin. Naruto felt that something was off. The chunin said that none of them had what it takes to be a chunin, and should just leave. Naruto stood there, and looked to see the room number indicated they were on the 3rd floor. Gaara walked up to Naruto. "So, you noticed it too?" Naruto nodded, and whispered, "Yeah, how can we be on the 3rd floor when we only went up 1 flight of stairs? It must be a genjutsu." Naruto and Gaara saw Tamari and Kankuro walking up to the next flight of stairs. Tamari turned around and gave Naruto a wink. Naruto immediately blushed, and Kankuro quietly chuckled as the four walked up the stairs. I was wondering if you two would catch on to that. Kankuro called back as they went up the steps. Gaara looked back, and noticed a few others walking towards the stairs. Well, if one can't even count the number of floors they have been on, then they shouldn't even consider being a shinobi. As the three walked up to the third floor, they noticed a few other groups enter a room near the end of the hall. It was one of the larger rooms, Naruto noted. The four entered the room and patiently waited. Naruto soon noticed Team 10, Team 8, and a group of genin from the previous year enter. Team 7 was the last to enter that were Leaf Nin. Naruto quietly listened in as the group talked amongst themselves, and noticed a certain Leaf Nin with glees approach the group. Apparently the man's name was Kabuto, and he had taken the exam 7 times already. That sounded a little weird, but Naruto didn't say anything. He watched as the young man pulled out a stack of blank cards, and applied some chakra to one. Ah, here we go. Gaara no Sabaku. He's completed about 16 B ranks, and 12. The card ripped into pieces as a small wind blew by them. Kabuto turned to Naruto, who gave the man a smile behind his scarf, and shook a finger at him like an adult scolding a child caught sneaking a cookie from the cookie jar. Kankuro laughed as Tamari grinned at the group of Konoha nin. Gaara remained unexpressive, but did look at the man named Kabuto with a certain interest. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, and much to Naruto's surprise, smirked at the boy. Naro, I look forward to seeing what you can do in the exams, the U. Chia called over to Naruto. Naruto nodded with a gleam in his eyes. Suddenly there was an explosion of smoke, and a loud voice interrupted the talking amongst the group. All right, that's enough talking maggots. Everyone turned to the new voice, and a few shuddered as a wave of killer intent was unleashed over the group by a man with various scars over his face. With him were a group of Chunin and Tokubetsu Junin. I'm Ibiki Morino, and I will be the proctor of the first part of the exams. Now, everyone follow me into the next room and await to be seated. Naruto gave his three friends a smile as his eyes crinkled into a smile, teeth unseen by his scarf. Well, good luck you guys. I have a feeling we'll need it. Quote. And so began the first phase of the Chunin exam. Sarutobi sat quietly in his office while he looked through a crystal ball that he used from time to time. He smiled as he noticed the all too familiar face, well, it was covered, but still familiar, of Naruto Uzumaki. Just by looking at the blonde, the third Hokage could tell that the boy had indeed grown and improved. So, that's Minato's son, came the quiet voice of the elderly man's former student. Sarutobi nodded. Yes, that's Naruto all right. He's wearing a Suna Hitai it seems. Kakashi was right. He let out a sigh, and let the image vanish. Well, at least he's continued his training. You seem a bit worried, old man. What's up? Jiraiya asked as he got up from his spot against the wall. Nothing really, it's just. Naruto really doesn't know his heritage, and I hate the fact that I can't tell the boy right now. He deserves to know, replied the Hokage with a sad expression. Jiraiya silently agreed with a nod. The two said nothing for a while, and eventually Jiraiya went to the window. Well, I'm gonna go get some fresh air. I'll see you later. Expect me back by the end of the second phase of the exam. Sarutobi nodded, knowing full well what his student would be doing. He would normally say something about it, but he didn't have the patience to deal with the Toad Sanin. He simply tipped his hat down a bit, and lit his pipe. He would have to get back to his paperwork soon, and that normally meant a good portion of the day being gone because of it. Naruto, I can only hope you don't hold any anger towards the Hidden Leaf, though you may have been through hard times. Those who do care for you miss you deeply, the elderly Kage said as he picked up his brush. The paperwork couldn't do itself, after all. 10,101,010. Naro, stop the griping already. Kankuro said with a hint of annoyance. Naruto hadn't shut up for the last 2 minutes now. Written test. What the heck is that all about? Question mark quote. Naruto asked under his breath. Hey, pipe down back there. Yelled Ibiki, and Naruto did. Eventually all the shinobi present in the room were given a number, and soon enough everyone was seated. Naruto looked around quickly. In the back was Gaara, sitting patiently with his eyes closed. About 2 rows behind in the right aisle Naruto was Tamari, and Kankuro was over to Naruto's right about 2 aisles forward. Okay, listen up, because I won't be repeating myself. You have 1 hour to complete this test. All of you will be starting with 10 questions, each one being worth 1 point. Now, unlike the traditional test, all of you will start this test with perfect scores. Quote. Ibiki took a minute so everyone could take the information in, however, with every question you get wrong or don't answer, you lose a point. Your points will be added together as a whole on what your teammates have gotten. Quote. Naruto banged his head against his desk. Why? For Konoha Team 7 and Suna Teams 3 and 4, you 6 will have a slightly different scoring. Instead of a possible 30 points, you'll be receiving only 20. Unfortunately, that means less points to have. Ibiki's face scanned the room. Any teammates who are unable to answer a single question within the hour will cause their teams to automatically fail. There were a few shouts of protest, but Ibiki's face only darkened. Silence. And the room went quiet again. By the way, anyone foolish enough to be caught cheating will receive a 2-point reduction. Get caught 5 times, and your team fails. Another wave of murmuring was heard before Ibiki finished. Your 10th question will be given at the end. Now then, begin. Tamari chanced a peek to look at Naruto, who had his head in his hands, eyes wide, and was positively trembling. Naruto. She thought before turning around. As soon as the test began, Naruto was staring at his test, wondering what the heck he should do. Okay, don't panic, we've got an hour to do this, no big deal. Just look over the questions, and see what you can answer. Naruto looked over the first question. Okay, deciphering a code, forget that one. Naruto was starting to sweat beads, but he went onward. 10,101,010. Sakura was going through the questions at a rapid-fire pace, yet something was bugging her. Geez, these questions are most likely beyond the level of most genin. Only a handful of us here, myself included, know any of them. How do they expect us all to know them? Sakura went on to the third question, the whole while hoping Sasuke knew at least some of the answers. Sasuke meanwhile was looking over the second question, having managed to get a rough idea of how to answer the code. Let's see. Shuriken trajectory. He read over it. Man, this is way too complicated for a genin. I mean, throwing on the field is one thing, but explaining it. How can we? Wait. Sasuke's eyes widened a little. That's it. They want us to cheat. That guy wants to see just how good we are at gathering information without getting caught. The Uchiha smirked. Well, this will be a lot easier now. He activated his Sharingan and looked for the nearest shinobi who seemed to know the answers, hoping he'd be able to mimic their movements. Coincidentally, it happened to be Sakura. I'll have to thank you later, Sakura. Sasuke quickly answered the third question as Sakura wrote it at a quick pace. With her being a whiz at shinobi knowledge, their team would no problem. 10,101,010. Shikamaru Nara was by no means a go-getter, as they would say. He was, in all fairness, lazy. He had some of the worst participation grades at the academy, and he only showed his intelligence in the tests that were taken. Fortunately for him and his team, written tests were right up his alley, easy. He had already answered 4 of the questions, and was getting started on the 5th when he saw his fellow teammate Ino slump over. Hey, about time she worked her technique on someone. He turned to see Sakura slump over a bit before looking up again and scanning over her test. Shikamaru held back a laugh, and turned quickly to see Choji do the same. Ino sure was troublesome, but she was helpful when she needed to be. 10,101,010. Tenten had managed to successfully hang an array of mirrors in the room while the proctor and Chunin weren't looking. Now she was turning them so Lee would be able to see them, thus helping him copy down some of the answers. Meanwhile, Neji Hyuga was using the Byakugan to see through one of the shinobi who had what it seemed to be a vast knowledge in the principles of I-Nation. He carefully copied down the answer while scanning ahead to see Tenten doing her part to help Lee. Team Guy was a team of the year previous in Konoha's Genin graduates, and they were well prepared for this exam. 10,101,010. Arf! Came the quiet bark of Akamaru as he scanned the surrounding area, giving Kiba Inuzuka the necessary answers. Kiba gave the occasional thanks as he wrote down the answers his companion barked out. Luckily, no one else knew how to communicate with dogs, or at least he hoped that was the case. Shino had just gotten a message back from a fly he had sent out, and copied down the answer the fly had given him. Through signals and movements made by the tiny insect, Shino nodded as the bug went off to collect the next answer. Hinata occasionally activated her Byakugan, seeing through a man who had quite a bit of knowledge and proper technique in executing an A-rank water-based jutsu while in a desert. Little to her knowledge, if she focused on the boy to her left she would have been looking at the blonde boy that she had admired for so long. 10,101,010. Kankuro had just successfully gotten to the bathroom with his escort. Hino began writing down the answers on a tiny scroll. Meanwhile, Tamari sat there, a bit irked that she only was able to answer one question. Sooner or later Kankuro would return with the other questions needed. She hoped so at least. Gaara had managed to get some information with the use of his Daisen no Mi, and was now copying down what he could see with the floating eye of sand. However, as he continued to scan around for another possible shinobi with possible answers, his third eye noticed Naruto was having trouble. Naruto was currently beating his head with both his fists, the whole time grumbling something about stupid tests. Gaara sighed, and slowly dissolved his third eye of sand. He then made his sand slowly trickle over to Naruto. Naruto was growling in frustration when he noticed a small cloud of sand forming near his hands. He immediately knew it was Gaara, and eventually a floating eye of sand formed. It turned towards Naruto's paper, then to Naruto again. A small trickle of sand crawled onto his paper and spelled out the words, "Need help." Naruto nodded, and saw the eye look to question 4. The sand began forming words, and Naruto copied down the answer. Eventually he had 3 questions down, and Naruto gave the eye a small grin behind his mask before the eye disappeared. As Gaara called back his sand, he couldn't help but let a small smile cross his features. Naruto was by no means a prodigy, but neither was the sand user. Naruto, however, was not one to quit, and the two would do whatever it took to pee this exam. 10,101,010. The hour was just about up, and already more than a third of the shinobi that had been in the room were gone now due to getting UGHT cheating. Ibiki looked at the time, and nodded, "All right, seeing as it's almost the end of our little test, it's time for the 10th question. Now, before we go into that, I will give you a choice." The silence in the room was broken as Kankuro entered the back door of the room with his escort again. As the puppet master walked down the aisle, he tossed a very minuscule scroll on Temari's table. She merely glanced at it, and quickly hid it in her hands. "All right. The 10th question. I've got this," Sakura thought as she rubbed her head. Somehow in the middle of the exam, she had dozed off briefly, and now she was feeling like someone had poked at her mind for the last 10 minutes. Regardless, she had all 9 questions answered. The 10th question is an all-or-nothing deal. If you choose not to answer the question, you will lose all your points, and leave the exams, and be allowed to participate next time. A few shouts of surprise were ignored as he continued, "Should you choose to answer the question and get it wrong though, you'll remain genin forever." "What? That's ridiculous," came the voice of Kiba as he pointed at the scarred Tokubetsu Jonin before the group of genin. "Well, it's your choice, take the 10th question, or pee it by for another day. Keep in mind though, your decision will affect the others in your team, and they'll meet the same fate as you do." Ibiki replied, followed by a bit of chuckling. Already a few of the remaining genin were getting nervous. "All right then, those who wish to leave, raise your hand and state if you wish to quit or not. You and your teammates, numbers will be marked, and you are then free to leave." Ibiki added, and after a few minutes, about half of those who had been in the room were gone. Naruto was frozen again. Genin forever. Oh man, that would definitely not be good if he planned on being a great Sunanin someday. He was about to raise his hand, when he stopped himself, and shouted out in both frustration and determination, "Ga! No way will I give up now. My teammate and I have come too far to give in now." He sat down in his seat, not budging an inch. A small grin crept on Ibiki's face. Ibiki looked to his Chunin eye stance, and saw them nod. It was time. Very well. For those of you who decided to take the 10th question, there was a tense silence as Ibiki looked at them all. You all page. He had a grin on his face now, and was looking over the faces of the remaining genin. The quiet that followed was priceless. Not a single breath was made, and if someone dropped a pin, it would have echoed at least several times before it stopped. What? Came the voices of several awestruck and confused genin. Naruto was standing up and looking bug-eyed with this new information. I said, you all pee, he repeated, and almost immediately Naruto was laughing in a mixture of relief and joy. He and the others had ped. Ibiki went on to explain the importance of information gathering of shinobi, and what it meant to risk it all for the good of your team. Naruto was taken back a bit when he saw the various scars on Ibiki's head. The man had suffered a lot torture it seemed. Just as the leader of the Anbu interrogation and torture department finished his speech, a black blur crashed through the side window. The black M unfurled to reveal a banner and a rather interesting kunoichi. The banner read, "Here comes the second Chunin exam proctor, Enko Mitarashi." In bold white lettering, "All right genin, I'm Enko Mitarashi, and I'll be the proctor of the second phase." Ready? Okay. Then let's go, cried the woman, and an awkward silence followed as she remained with her hand pumped in the air. Ibiki sighed. Enko, you're early, again. Enko had a look that could only be described as embarrassment. Oh. She scanned the room, and a frown crossed her face. Ibiki, there's still too many of them here. You made your test too easy. She spoke with a disapproving look. Maybe this group is just more talented than the previous years. Quote. Ibiki shot back in a calm voice, receiving a HMPH from the purple-haired woman. Well, either way, the numbers will be less than half when I'm through with them by tomorrow, she said with an unmistakable grin of mischief on her face. A few of the genin shuddered. 10,101,010. The night came quickly as Naruto sat on the roof of his hotel. He had gone off on his own to get some fresh air, and was currently engrossed with the stars in the sky right now. Naro, would you mind if I join you? Came the quiet voice of Gaara. Naruto turned and simply nodded to the younger boy. The sand user sat there for a while before he spoke again. You've been distant. That's not like you. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I just needed some time to myself. Naruto then remembered something. Oh yeah, thanks for the help today. Gaara nodded. It's what friends do, isn't it? Naruto gave a grunt of agreement as he continued to watch the heavens above them. The two were quiet for a while before Naruto decided to speak again. Hey, Gaara, what do you think will happen tomorrow? I mean, that didn't sound all that good from that crazy woman. I mean, more than half of us will be eliminated. I'm not sure, but I have confidence that you and I as well as Nei-san and Kankuro will do fine. Gaara replied as he watched the moon above. Naruto sighed. I hope you're right, because I'm pretty sure I would have dragged us down today if the whole thing was merely a test to see what we would do for our team. I mean, I'll be honest, Gaara, I'm an idiot when it comes to that written stuff. That may be, but that doesn't mean you are any less of a ninja. You and I were chosen to represent Suna for a reason, Naro. Especially you, your wind manipulation has improved greatly since we first battled each other. Gaara said while turning to look at his best friend. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Gaara. I just hope we can get through this like you say we will. Quote. Gaara and Naruto continued to watch the sky quietly. It had been a sort of tradition of theirs. They would watch the stars and talk a little while enjoying the view. Around 9 o'clock Naruto got up and stretched. Well, I'm going to grab a bowl of ramen, want to come along? Quote. Gaara's mouth lifted at the corners in a small smile. No thank you Naro. I'm going to go meditate for a while here. Naruto gave a wave to the sand user as he left. Another thing Gaara had picked up on over the couple of months. Meditation. He felt a lot better when he did it, and it helped him remain controlled and calm like he always seemed. Naruto pushed aside the curtains of the ramen stand when he finally arrived. Though Ayame went home for the night, and Chuki was the lone person running the place, there was a customer. It was a familiar boy with black hair, and he wore a blue shirt with a fan-like design on the back. Tsuki-san, one more bowl for the night, please, came the quiet voice of Sasuke Uchiha as he ordered another bowl of beef ramen. Naruto was about to just exit and hope no one saw him, but unfortunately, Tsuki spotted the masked boy. Ah, welcome back. You're the Suna Nin from yesterday, right? Asked the old man as he spotted Naruto. Naruto deepened his voice a little. Yes, I'm him. Just thought I would get a bite to eat. Sasuke turned around, and for a moment, surprise was visible in his eyes before he hid his expression. Naro, nice to see you again. The Uchiha greeted. Naruto was still not used to Sasuke being so, well, sociable. Yeah, same here Sasuke. Naruto sat down a seat away from the raven-haired boy. Sasuke knew that it was Naruto. The ninja was short as the blonde, and the fact that the boy ordered a large bowl of miso pork was a dead giveaway. Well, sort of. The fact that Kakashi confirmed that it was Naruto helped, Sasuke admitted. Part of Sasuke wanted to grip the idiot by his collar and knock some sense into him for being stupid and leaving the team, yet another part remembered that Naruto had a burden that made things like that likely to happen. Sasuke watched as Naruto turned around so his back was facing the Uchiha. He pulled up his mask a little so his mouth could slurp down some of the noodles. He turned around, and noticed the Uchiha looking at him. What? Quote. Sasuke smirked. Nothing, just never thought I'd see someone who ate ramen so fast before. Naruto stiffened for a second before he forced out a nervous laugh. Haha, well, back in Suna, ramen is a rarity, and I happen to like it. So, I find it hard to hold back from inhaling it. Sasuke nodded. You know, my friend Choji said once that people who like Ichirakus are good people in general. I guess that statement holds true with you as well. Sasuke turned to his new bowl, and blew on the noodles before picking up a small strand with his chopsticks. Naruto looked over to the boy, and a thought crossed his mind. He's friends with Choji. Naruto almost couldn't believe the Uchiha being friends with anyone, but he supposed being gone for 3 months or so could change anyone. Sasuke could tell that Naruto was watching him, and he knew that giving that little line that Choji often used sparked surprise in the blonde. In all honesty, Sasuke had become friends with Team 10 as a result of Sakura putting aside her differences with Ino, and the two had become good friends again. Apparently they both had gotten over their fangirl days. And Ino said she was interested in someone else anyway, but she wouldn't tell even Sakura about it. Sasuke found that Shikamaru happened to be a real mastermind in shogi, and Choji was actually a real nice guy once you got to know him. Ino, well, she was bossy, but Sakura could be too. Nevertheless, Team 7 and 10 had become good friends. Well, that Choji must be right, since I do love this stuff. It sure beats instant ramen any day. Naruto said with some enthusiasm. Sasuke merely nodded in reply. The two shared some small talk about what they thought of the first part of the exams. Sasuke admitted that he only got to the first question before he got lost, and Naruto in turn admitted that he didn't know where to begin on the test. After some time it was going on to 11:30 when the two boys put down their money and bid Tsuki good night. Naruto was walking with Sasuke when the Uchiha spoke up. So, any ideas as to what the second part may be? Quote. Naruto was for the upteenth time amazed that Sasuke was trying to make small talk. No clue, but that woman was scary. The two both gave a cringe before resuming their walk. Sasuke eventually turned down towards the gloomy and empty road that lead to the Uchiha compound. Naruto headed towards his hotel in the opposite direction. Hey, Naro. Naruto turned as Sasuke called to him. Good luck tomorrow, but if we do go up against each other in a fight or something, don't expect to win easily against me. Quote. Naruto was grinning behind his cloth. Haha, I should say the same to you, Sasuke. I'll see you tomorrow. Sasuke watched as the blonde went onward. He let a small chuckle escape his throat. Hey. Still Adobe. He turned to continue his walk. I'm glad you're still the same guy, Naruto. 10,101,010. Naruto walked into the door of his room to meet the frowning face of Temari. Oh, hey, Temari-chan. Quote. Temari said nothing, but as Naruto looked behind his girlfriend he noticed Kankuro mouthing the words, "You're dead," while making a motion similar to punching someone's face in. then pointing to Tamari. Naruto visibly paled. Naruto, where were you? The blonde Kunoichi asked as she took a step forward, looking down on the shorter boy. Didn't Gaara tell you? Naruto stuttered, sensing the killer intent radiating off her. Why was she so mad? I didn't ask him. I like to respect his privacy, and he likes to remain undisturbed when he's meditating. The girl replied as she cracked her knuckles. Oh, well, I went to go get some ramen. Naruto decided to leave out the part of running into Sasuke. Nevertheless, Tamari was still angry. Well, I was hoping to spend some quality time with you, but apparently you love those noodles more, so I can understand. She sounded more hurt than anything now. Tamari-chan, you know that's not true. Naruto looked at the clock on the wall. We can go and hang out together still, we've got an hour and a half. Tamari smiled a bit, okay. But I'm still not happy that you went and left us like that. Naruto took her by the hand and led her outside. He let go and told her to follow him. Eventually they were standing at the foot of the stairs that led up to the Hokage monument. Come on, Tamari-chan, I want to show you the best view in all of Konoha. Tamari followed him up the numerous flights of stairs. By the time they had reached the top of the monument, she was on the ground heaving in air. Geez, how often did you come up here? Quote, oh, about 3 or 4 times a week, maybe more. Naruto thought out loud, and sat down next to her. He pointed out to the surrounding area. See, look at it, Tamari-chan. This is why I come up here. Quote, Tamari looked down at Konoha, and she had to admit, it was indeed a wonderful sight. The lights flickered as the pale moonlight shimmered over the village. A cool wind blew, and she shivered a bit. Naruto pulled her closer, and she smiled. You're right, Naruto. It is the best view in all of Konoha. Naruto smiled as he looked at Tamari. The moonlight reflected in her eyes as she looked at him, and her face seemed to glow just right under the pale beams of light. Yeah. It sure is beautiful. Tamari seemed to notice his gaze was on her, not Konoha. She grinned a bit. What are you looking at, Naru-kun? She teased, inching closer. Naruto seemed to snap out of his daze, and even in the dark Tamari noticed his blush under the cloth scarf. Just looking at your eyes, he mumbled, looking down. He was embered, and the close proximity with Tamari wasn't helping. No matter how often the two would be close together, physical affection wasn't something he was used to yet. Tamari leaned in on him. You like my eyes? She asked in a sultry voice, and put her lips against his ear. What do you like about them? Naruto was sweating now. Well, I like, how they. He squirmed a bit as she wrapped her arms around him, but eventually he stopped as she rested her head on his shoulder. They're a really pretty shade of teal. I think that's the color. They reflect the moon really well too, and while they're very beautiful, they also have a fierceness in m2. Either way, they're very beautiful, and show just how wonderful of a person you are. Tamari couldn't help but laugh. He was so honest and innocent. Haha, Naruto, want to know what I think about your eyes? Quote, Naruto actually looked at her. My eyes. He laughed. What's so special about them? Tamari found that last question hard to believe. What wasn't special about them? She spoke quietly. Naruto. Those eyes of yours are such a bright color of blue, they're so deep and vibrant. Someone could actually get lost in them. She looked up at him, in fact. I find myself doing that right now. She smiled softly. You want to know what else is special about them? Naruto nodded. They seem to speak your emotions better than your own voice can. They're truly the windows to your soul, Naruto. Maybe that's why they're so beautiful. Naruto was blushing now. Geez, if you wanted to outdo me in compliments, you should have forewarned me, Tamari-chan. Quote, Tamari laughed as she blushed a bit, and giggled, Baka, you know it's true. She then gave him a playful shove. Then Naruto did something he didn't seem to think about. He pulled down his mask, and gave Tamari a kiss on the lips, earning a surprised look from the girl. She closed her eyes before pulling Naruto closer, and deepened the kiss. Naruto's body was pulsing with electricity it seemed as Tamari turned her head to get a better liplock on him. Man, she sure wasn't afraid of doing this. After about a minute, or a year in the minds of Naruto and Tamari, they pulled back. Naruto was grinning from ear to ear as Tamari seemed to flushed in the face. Well, when did you get so daring? She asked him, slightly out of breath. Hey, I just saw my chance, I guess. He made a motion to pull up his mask, but Tamari gripped his hand. Just one more, she said, and before he could say anything, she gave him another chaste kiss on the lips before pulling his mask up and smiling at him. You better ditch that when we get back. Home. I really miss not seeing your face. Naruto nodded. Fine, fine. When we get back home, I'll do that, Tamari-chan. The two stayed in each other's arms for about another half hour before they decided to head back. When they arrived, they were greeted by a sleepy Kankuro who was ready for bed, and a very quiet Gaara who was watching a woman on the television demonstrate how to make the best omelet for breakfast for a group of people. Tamari gave Naruto one more peck on the cheek before she walked slowly back to her room, looking over her shoulder and waving goodnight to Naruto, then shutting her door. Naruto shut his door, and then sat on his bed while grinning like there was no tomorrow. His thoughts were however interrupted by laughter. Man, Naruto, you've got it bad. Naruto frowned a bit. Whatever, Kankuro. Said Puppet Master simply laughed before rolling over to fall asleep in his bed. Naruto went through his nightly ritual soon after, and then went to his bed as well. He said goodnight to Gaara, who quietly nodded. Much to Naruto's relief, Gaara turned the volume down on the television. Tomorrow, the second part of the exams would start. 10,101,010. The following day, Suna teams 3 and 4 woke up to the wonderful smell of sweet rolls. Gaara had taken the liberty of using the hotel's bakery at 4 in the morning, which was when it opened, to make the tasty morning treats. Even Baki himself had one, or two. They arrived at the gates of Training Ground 44, and were surprised to see that only the team from Sound and the GR Nin team was there, as well as Anko. Gaara seemed to be in a staring contest with one of the Odo Nin who had bandages all over his face. And Naruto, for some odd reason, had the powerful urge to wipe off that smirk off the face of the Odo Nin whose hair stuck up a bit. You got a problem, Shorty? Asked the grinning Odo Nin as he looked at the blonde boy. Shorty. Naruto made the motion to walk forward, but was stopped by Kankuro. Naro, save it for later. You can mop the floor with him when we get the chance. Kankuro said, and then gave the Odo Nin group a smirk. Besides, they don't look that tough to me. The girl in their group spoke. TCH, looks who's talking, clown boy. That struck a nerve. I'll have you know that this is traditional war paint used by. Hey, knock it off over there. Came the voice of Anko. The two groups stopped. After 10 minutes of waiting, the other teams had all arrived. Naruto sent a quick nod to Sasuke, and Sasuke gave Naro a nod as well. Okay, listen up. The next test is a survival-based test. You'll all be receiving a scroll to carry. Anko showed the groups 2 different scrolls, one is a heaven scroll, the other earth. The objective of this is to retrieve the other scroll needed by an opposing team by any means necessary. For the next 5 days, the Forest of Death will be your battlegrounds to accomplish this objective. She held up a small map. Training Ground 44 is designed in a circular fashion, with 44 gates around it. You all have to obtain both of these scrolls and make it, she pointed to a tower-like structure on the map, to this tower within the 5-day period. Understood. Seems fair enough, came the voice of Kankuro, and he turned to Tamari. You ready for this? Quote. Tamari laughed. Come on, Kankuro, this will be easy. Do you really need to ask me such a stupid question? Hey, I'm not finished here. Anko called out. Before you receive your scrolls, each of you will receive a consent form to sign. Quote. What for? Came the voice of Shikamaru. Well, so I'm not held responsible if you don't make it through, of course. I mean, I'd hate to have all of you becoming a liability for me. They don't call it the Forest of Death for nothing. Anko replied, followed by a series of laughing fits, which no one else saw funny. Sakura looked over the ominous woods ahead. That place gives me the creeps. Relax, Sakura. Kakashi's put us through far worse in many cases. Quote. Sasuke roared, and Sakura gave a quick nod. She looked over to see Naruto laughing. Ha ha ha. Forest of Death, come on. What a joke. All there probably is are a few snakes and spiders, so what? Naruto started to speak in a high-pitched voice, imitating Anko. They don't call it the forest of death for nothing. Naruto continued his laughing spree until he felt a sharp, yet brief pain on his cheek. He immediately recognized it as a kunai, and soon felt a presence behind him. So, you're a tough guy, huh? Anko leaned in close. You know, it's usually the tough guys who end up spilling their blood in there. She licked a bit of the blood of Naruto's cheek, and if one listened closely they could hear a very angry Temari bristling with anger. Anko went back to her speech about the second part. Anyway, there are only 3 ways you can be disqualified. She held up 3 fingers. 1. If your team is unable to obtain both scrolls and reach the tower within 5 days, you're out. 2. If your team loses a member, or a teammate is incapacitated and unable to continue, you're out. And 3. If you open up either of the 2 scrolls before reaching the tower. Well, suppose one of the scrolls happens to accidentally open up on us, suggested Naruto, who was nursing a stinging cheek. Just don't open it up, trust me. Anko replied, giving the group a wide grin. Eventually all the teams received their forms to sign, and they all went to their own little spots to discuss and talk. Naruto was sitting with Kankuro, Temari, and Gaara. I don't like that woman, came the somewhat jealous voice of Temari. Well, she seems a little weird, but she isn't that bad, is she, Temari-chan? Came the questioning voice of Naruto. Just don't worry about it for now. We're going to have to find out how to go about this, Temari. Remember, Naro and Gaara are on a separate team now, spoke Kankuro. Well, if we meet each other, we'll help in whatever way we can, replied Temari, and the 3 boys nodded in agreement. Sakura was walking along the gate when she noticed Ino. Hey, Ino. Ino smiled, billboard brow. Quote. Sakura sighed. Not now, Ino, listen. I think we should establish some kind of way to work things out if we meet each other while we're in there. Ino nodded, and smiled, a support system of sorts. Not a bad idea. Shikamaru and Choji, along with Sasuke, walked up. Man, I can't believe we got stuck with such a troublesome test. Choji was on the verge of tears. What are we going to do for food? Quote. Sasuke sighed. Choji, the forest has plenty of food to eat. You just have to know what's poisonous and what's not. Ino walked up to Choji. Don't worry, Choji, I can tell which plants are poisonous in Konoha, so we should be fine. Besides, you should have enough of your snacks to last for some time. Choji smiled a bit. I guess you're right, Ino, but thanks for worrying me. He pulled out a bag of barbecue-flavored chips and began to eat, while Ino just sighed with a shaking of her head and a smile. Her team was weird, but they would do fine, she was sure of it. Anko looked over to see that everyone looked ready. All right, it's time to get your scrolls. After that, everyone report to your designated gate, and wait there until the gates are opened. Quote. Everyone went to retrieve their scrolls, and unfortunately for Temari and Naruto, they were on opposite ends of the grounds. Be careful, Naro. Temari spoke as she gave him a quick peck on the cheek. Hey, I've got Gaara with me, he'll keep us both out of trouble. You and Kankuro stay on your toes in there, okay? I promise we'll be okay. Naruto gave her a masked grin, and she nodded before heading off with Kankuro. Naruto followed Gaara, who carried a heaven scroll with him, and the 2 waited at gate number 22. Let's do our best, Naro, spoke Gaara, and Naruto laughed with a grin behind his scarf. You bet, we've got this in the bag, Naruto replied, and the 2 anxiously awaited for the gates to be opened. After what seemed like forever, Anko took a look at her watch. All right, I guess it's time to open the gates. She looked to the forest and nodded. It was time. All right, the second part of the Chunin exams is on. With that being said, the gates opened, and all of the genin teams raced into the forest of death, each with their objectives fresh in their minds. The race to the tower had begun.